Thanks everyone for coming along tonight. My name's Gavin Gloser. I'm the co-founder of Your Wealth Hub. Your Wealth Hub brings all the education out every quarter. So this is our second education series for the year. This one we've gone a little bit different. We're talking more at the other end of the spectrum when it comes to wealth accumulation. We're talking, of course, about retirement. And there's a whole heap of information we can share with you about retirement, but rather than kind of giving you the bland technical stuff, what we thought we would do this time is run a Q&A panel from three of our specialists that we've brought along today. And the idea of having the specialists along is we keep it nice and tight, we keep it nice and conversational, but importantly we ask questions that perhaps you may want to ask along the way. So we've taken questions from clients that we've talked to, feedback from the marketplace, and we've created this session tonight. Now along the way, you are absolutely free to ask questions and kind of probe probably a little bit deeper in some of the areas that we're covering off. Try and make it a nice balance of kind of the financial elements of retiring and kind of moving to that next phase of your life, the health and well-being side of things, and we have a live retiree in the room. And we'll, we managed to encourage a live one. To come into and to share their experience, because I've known Mick for many years, and his experience moving into retirement has been a little bit different and not as he thought, and it goes a lot into the planning elements that we're going to talk about tonight. So before I start, I'll introduce the panel. So first up we've got Marc Bineham, who's the Principal and Managing Director of Noel & Co, and also co-founder of Your Wealth Hub as well. Welcome along, Marc, again. Victoria Black, who interestingly 2016 Optimum Businesswoman of the Year, and also does a number of different things, but very passionate about the health and well-being space. And Victoria, we're going to explore that first up in just a moment. But if I can just introduce Michael Thorne, who's our real-life retiree, and will give us the insights into his world. But importantly, as I said, he brings the real-life element of retiree. He's also a part-time softball coach as well, so that's also on his resume. So welcome along, guys. So I thought I'd just point out first that all the information we're talking tonight is of a general nature. It's not specific to your situation. If you do have any questions around your situation, obviously we need to sit down and talk to you in a little bit more detail, which Marc or anyone on the team will be able to do. So we'll continue. So I've introduced the team. A few things that we wanted to touch on tonight. Like I said, we wanted to set the scene to give you as many tips as we can as you prepare for retirement. It is a different phase of your life. It really does dawn in a new age of your kind of lifespan. When people start to move towards retirement, from our experience, people feel a little bit threatened about what's next. Is this the end of an important part of my life, or in fact, is this something that we should be looking forward to? How do we kind of get ourselves in order to make sure we prepare both mentally, physically, and financially for it? So we're going to try to cover as many of these points off today. We're going to hopefully pose the tough questions to these guys so they can help us out. I'm going to share the real life stories. But like I say, importantly, if you do have a question, if you do have an area you want to talk about or ask the panel about, please jump in at any time. I've got a few little light-hearted slides that you may have seen before, but the first one, obviously, I think kind of wraps up, kind of the sentiment about retirement when we're talking purely around the superannuation perspective. I'll give you a moment to read that. And I've got one that I found when I was Googling some light-hearted retirement pieces. I think this actually sums up very clearly when people are starting to retire, or they move into that retirement phase. It's often too late by the time they actually start to consider how much is enough for retirement. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. One of the flyers on your sheet is an article that Steve Wright, a member of our team, has written, which talks about your retirement number. And I think this retirement number concept actually fits really nicely at this. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. So we're going to go through to question number one. So our first question tonight is around what are the common misconceptions around retiring. And Marc, I'm going to start with you because you really sit the cold face when it comes to people coming to you quite often when it's too late. Your role as a financial planner, what do you think the common misconceptions are when it comes to entering retirement?
Yeah, there's a stack of them actually, but if I had to sort of, the first one that comes up is that, the government will look after me. And I think definitely from My parents' generation, that theme is, the war generation. They could live off the smell of an oily rag, as it used to say. And so pension was enough, and they are living quite comfortably. But I think for the baby boomer generations and every other XY and millennials going right through, that won't be the case. Firstly, the government won't have a social security system, I don't think, for probably 10 years, 15 years, unless you are definitely in need or on disability. So, you know, the government is having the superannuation legislated so that that is your retirement. So, but it is still a misconception when people speak and they say, well, you know, I've paid taxes all my life, I deserve the government to look after me. At the situation now, it's if you're a single person, it's $400 a week, or $600 if you're a couple. That's not a lot of money, but that's where it is. So that's one big misconception. Probably the other one is, I'll spend less in retirement. And I'll probably talk about it a bit later because there was an article, a court case just in America where parents trying to get rid of their 30-year-old and they couldn't kick him out of the house. But that's 1 in 3 up to 35 still living at home, and 60-70% of them aren't paying any rent, aren't paying any expenses. So all that money is coming out of your potential retirement income. So you're not spending less in retirement, you're spending more.
So based on that, Mark, are you saying then perhaps there's been a big mind shift around cost of living and people's kind of perception around what's attainable now, and perhaps they're spending more, kind of taking that into retirement is going to be probably a bit more of a challenge because you do need to save more? Is that kind of a thinking?
Yeah, I think so. And because, you know, there is aged care situations, there is even people that say, oh, we're going to possibly downsize. I know that's a question for later, but it's, you know, you have grandkids. People want to travel more than they ever did. All this comes at a cost. And so, you just have to be very mindful that you're not thinking, well, okay, if I'm retiring, I'm just going to play golf every day, so I won't have as much to spend. It doesn't. That's not in reality what happens.
Okay. Victoria, I might start enter to your space, into the health and well-being side of things, but I'd love you first to frame up your background, because it's quite a unique background, and just for the context of the conversation, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. My background is publishing and media, and I am the publisher of most of Australia's wedding magazines and websites, and this year we launched into the health and wellness space. So we launched, it's called Superfast Diet, and it's based on intermittent fasting. You might have heard of the 5-2, which there's so much science and so much medical evidence around how good taking a little break from eating is for you. I can talk about that later. So I'm the co-founder of Superfast Diet, and it's not just about what you eat, it's all about exercise. We've got amazing positive psychology program as well with Dr. Tim Sharp from the Happiness Institute. You might have heard of him, Dr. Happy, he's on TV a lot. We've got a lot of doctors on our program, and I'm really passionate about helping people to be the best version they can be of themselves. Yeah.
So when it comes to people obviously entering into a retirement space, now what's your thoughts on, I suppose, the misconception of how you carry yourself from a nutritional perspective, or, you know, I think of my own parents who are 67 and 66 today. My mum's birthday today, so I have to call her later. But just now I thought about it. When they're entering into the retirement phase at that time of their life, is it a conscious decision that people need to look after themselves differently?
Well, they definitely do. And the great thing is they've got more time to look after themselves. But I just want to share something with you which I found absolutely fascinating. There's a brand new study which has just come out, which has been going over a very long period, like 10 years. 3 million people were studied to get the results of what it takes, what are the main determinants of a long life. And I think the results will surprise you, because it really surprised me. And the good news is it's not as important as you think to be really, really slim. It's number 8 on the list to have an ideal body weight. Number 7 is to exercise most days. And then in the middle is a flu vaccine. So I've never had one myself, but apparently it's proven that if you have the flu vaccine, you're much more likely to live to a ripe old age. Quit boozing. That's really bad news. Anyway.
When you say quit, is that like no?
No, actually, I have a point on that. Because if you have up to 2 glasses a day, it is actually good for your health, particularly red wine, the Mediterranean diet. I actually brought along my glasses.
Oh.
This is my glass. I have 2 of these a day. Yeah, but in all seriousness, yeah, a couple of glasses a day is good for you. Quit smoking. I'm sure nobody in here does that. Number 2 on the list was to have close relationships. Now, Mike and I were just talking about how when you retire, it's like, hello, wifey, I haven't seen you for a while. And now you're with each other 24/7. So it's really important to keep those close relationships really positive and with your family and your friends. Number 1, the number 1 determinant of a happy, healthy, long life is called social integration. And that is how connected you are in your social situation. So do you know the name of the guy who makes your coffee? Do you chat to the lady at the bus stop and the girl at the checkout at Coles? The more chatty you are, that's the number 1 determinant. That's the more socially integrated you are. So Anne-Marie and I will be fine. Yeah, I just thought that was really fascinating. It's about keeping your family and your friends close.
Yeah, okay. We may even dive into those a little bit more as we kind of progress tonight. Mick, from your perspective, someone who's gone through their workforce, retired, and now has spent 4 or 5 years in retirement. This is really your space. What have you seen that you think has blown your mind as something you didn't even consider leading into retirement?
Well, the misconception, I suppose, was that, hey, this is going to be fun. And that lasts for about 6 months. Because you just wake up and you've got nothing to do and you just put around. Then all of a sudden, your wife will say things like, this is a classic, what'd you do today? I looked at the emails. What else? So all of a sudden you say to yourself, well, retirement is not about, sitting around looking at emails. So all of a sudden you got to say to yourself, and you're right, in conjunction with your partner, your wife, I've got to do something. I just can't keep doing nothing. So the misconception I had, I probably thought I was going to do nothing and just play golf 5 days a week. I do play golf once a week, but 5 days a week would be too much. It would send you nuts anyway. But all of a sudden you've got to start doing things. And that's the track I've probably got to these days. And you're right, those 8 points are so good. We haven't met before either, right? I had my flu injection last week, by the way. And it doesn't hurt, right? I tensed and he said it's over. I said, really? So yeah, that's good. But you've got to start doing things, and you've got to start, and the things I got into, as Gavin touched upon, is, of all things, coaching softball. I already coached softball on weekends, but this has now gone to a level where I'm knocking back work, only because I'm retired. Yeah, it's you just got to do things. And then the other thing I did was I took up an interest. You talk about social and all that stuff, so true. I took up to learn a musical instrument. I played the ukulele badly, but it's huge, you know what I mean, for your own satisfaction and your own, what I do today. Well, today I went to uke, and I did. You've got to do those sorts of things so that you wake up in the morning and say, I've got things to do. Otherwise, you will go nuts.
Question for you then, Mick, and I might kind of fold into the next question here. Question 2 is how do you know you're well positioned for retirement, and how could you improve your position? So given that obviously things have happened, and I know you've got a bit of a story around what happened to you not long after you retired from a health perspective, Can you give us a bit of an insight, if you don't mind, into what happened and how that changed your perception around what you need to do to prepare for retirement?
Oh, well, you think financially wise, I was always a believer in superannuation. I was always a believer in having a planner because you need someone to keep you honest. You know what I mean? I'm not a great believer in going online, do your own plans and all that sort of stuff. That's just not me. I prefer to have someone, because I coach, I've always been in sport, I think you've got to have someone watching you and saying, well, that's going well, time you or something. You've got to have someone to monitor what you're doing. And that's what, to me, a financial planner does. They're a coach, they're a project manager, whatever you want to call them. They're the people that do that, no matter how knowledgeable you are in that industry. I think you need someone to keep you honest and someone to keep you on track. Otherwise, you don't. You go. It's like when you go on a diet. Oh, yeah, it's all right. You know what I mean? I'll just have a bit of ice cream. No one will know. I think you need to have. So I always had superannuation. So financially, I was pretty well off. There wasn't. I couldn't see a problem financially. Although that becomes an interesting question too about how much is enough. It's just weird. You're sitting there having lunch with some friends of ours, and the subject comes up, and you got how much you got? Oh, I got 2.5. I got 2 whatever, and they said, oh, geez, I don't think that's enough. You go, oh my God. So then all of a sudden you go, how much is enough? And Joanne, my wife, is saying, you said we had enough. So all of a sudden, how much is enough? I think goes back to yourself. You just got to work yourself out. But you've got to make sure that you've got enough, because if you don't have enough, then that's going to be a problem. So, do you want to touch on the health?
Yeah, I'll touch on the health. Before you go there, I think the lead up to retirement, when you thought you had enough, is there anything in there by way of a tip or something that you would have changed when you start thinking deeper about how much is enough? What would you have changed to kind of cost out your lifestyle, or what would you have done in that space?
Yeah, I don't know. I probably would take a little bit more interest in how much I had and how long that would last for. So I probably would have looked at it a little bit more. It was just there. I knew, you get your yearly statement, it was going fine. I never sort of, I probably should have looked at it a bit harder and said, maybe involve my wife a bit more.
Yeah. Do you think she feels financially secure?
Now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is that because you told her she is? Or?
No, she comes to all the meetings now, and that's important with the planner. And he calms her down because, and Mark, we get too carried away with the press, and superannuation is for the long term, it's not for the short term. Share market downs are short term, and sometimes Joanne sees a thing on the ordinaries are down today, all of a sudden she's a financial guru, and we're doomed, all right? So there's too much buzz in the air about superannuation because it's a long term, it's not where, they're short term. So.
Okay. We'll just touch on the health side just for a moment as well, because that's been a big part of the way you've reframed how you live your life now.
Yeah, which gets in your area. I had a checkup. I was in the corporate world, hadn't had a checkup, living good lunches, all that sort of stuff, having a good time. I retired, and I said, I should have a checkup. That's a good idea. That's a good idea, man. So I went and had a checkup, and the bloke said to me, he said, you had a stress test? I said, no. He said, oh, well, hop on, might as well do it. Hopped on the bloody machine. He said, halfway through it, he said, you better stop. I said, what's that? He said, we got a problem. So in the short, that is, I had stents put in, thank goodness. He caught it, no problem. Then I had a blood test, that's scary as well. He rings up and says, I think you're a diabetic. So all of a sudden I've got stents and I'm a diabetic. So all of a sudden things start to change, I went to a dietitian, haven't been to one of them, and all of a sudden I've got to change in diet. I'm going to a gym, I've never been a gym person. Going to the gym, still go to the gym. went to the cardiologist a couple of months ago. He doesn't want to see me for 12 months. That's always good. When you go to a cardiologist and he says, I don't want to see you for 12 months, you go, beautiful, I'll see you next year. Yeah, your life changes. Changes yourself also. We want to do a bit more travel, and that sort of cut into that a bit because they were saying you better not travel for a while until things settle down. So you certainly changes your whole lifestyle.
Victoria, just on the diet side of things, for someone in a mixed position, is this something that you've probably heard of or seen examples of, or what type of thoughts do you have around the diet impact and how important? I know you've mentioned the 5-2 diet and intermittent fasting and how that kind of works. What's your thoughts on kind of mixed situation and kind of people in general in that phase?
Sure, it's actually really simple. Just eat real food. You know, when you cut through all the people talking about diets, you know, paleo, low fat, high fat, all of that, high protein, etc. When it comes down to it, most of them really are just saying eat real food. So if it's out of a packet, try to avoid it. And if it's fresh, that's what you have most of. So it's actually not that hard. It's really simple.
KFC's fresh.
I know you love KFC. No, just no.
Dietitians are interesting people, sorry. I went to this dietitian and I paid money. And I thought, oh, this is going to be fantastic. She's going to give me the diet. And she looked at me and said to me, Michael, here's an idea. I was going, how good is this? She's given me the magic idea here. She said, and I'll never forget, she looked straight at me and said, smaller plate. I've gone away and we went, put it in a plate, you know what I mean? Went back to her after I lost 10 kilos. And I said, you're right, Alex.
Yeah.
Smaller plate. And it's so true. So, it's not, because I thought I was going to get the magic diet. But one of the things was try a smaller plate.
And mostly veggies on your plate, not mostly meat.
Yeah, the third, the picture they use. Yeah.
Mark, from your perspective, you obviously would see a lot of clients who are kind of heading into retirement. Obviously, they're re-gauging kind of where they should be. They're perhaps comparing against their peers. Michael mentioned, people are saying, "Oh, I've got this much. You should have this much." Well, that's not enough. How much is enough? What's your thoughts from a rule of thumb? When should people start preparing? When people are entering retirement, what's their frame of mind, and what's the catalyst for them to go, I've got to do something now?
Yeah, I'm glad you actually said that because I'd forgotten what the original question was now during the diet. And Michael's not a client of ours, by the way, so just so this first I'm hearing what Mike says, this is the first I'm hearing it, but that's actually also a very common thing people saying around the table, well, how much is enough and all this, and it is the number one issue people worry about, especially money stress, people getting close to retirement is, will I have enough? And there's lots of rules of thumbs out there, and they say, oh, well, if you think of it, 5%, so if you've got $1 million, that's 50,000. You need $2 million if you want 100,000, but it just doesn't work that way. That's too simplistic. If anyone who's been in small business knows cash flow is king, that's a very popular term, and people talk about budgeting for your personal, but it's still cash flow. You need to really, the years leading up to retirement, is know what you're spending your money on. Because that's the only real indication for you in your particular circumstance. When you do retire, I'm pretty confident we can survive on 50,000 a year, 100,000 a year, because you know what you were living on before you retire. So someone else might say, oh, well, you need this amount. No, every person is different. Every person needs to look at their own situation and really, and there's lots of programs, and even all the banks on their websites have these little cash flow programs. You just need to get an idea of what you are spending your money on, what you're spending your money on before retirement, you'll be spending your money on after retirement. So you need to, that's the best gauge.
Yeah, cash flow, please.
Cash flow, absolutely.
I actually have heard when people actually get to retirement and people are kind of living their life thinking, oh, we only spend $40,000 a year, we might spend $500 a week or $800 a week. This is what we think we're spending. If you consider that 1 in 3 people spend more than they earn, the reality is the people who take that number into retirement are probably going to go through the retirement savings a hell of a lot faster because they've never had a handle on their spending to start with. So using cash flow tools like My Prosperity, MoneySoft, or whatever the case may be, which actually monitors all your cash flow, is the best way up front to get an idea and understanding of what you're actually carrying into retirement. Now, sure enough, you're going to be living in a tax-free environment, there's other benefits once you retire, but at the end of the day, your spending habits will dictate how fast your nest egg's actually going to be going down. So that's absolutely a really good point.
Just to add to that, because it was just further to Mick's point, was saying about when your wife was saying, well, now the Dow, stock market's gone down, so it's all going to crash, we're going to lose it all. Doing what you did, outsourcing that, it's just outsourcing that worry, outsourcing that stress. And a really interesting stat I read about just only a couple of months ago is that people say, oh, well, now I'm getting close to retirement, I've got to be more conservative, I should maybe have my money in the bank. When you retire, from the average lifespan from the next 20, 30 years, you earn 60% of your income post-retirement. So you can't think, well, I'm just retired now, I've got to put my money in the bank and earn 1%. It just won't last. So you've got to be really conscious of where you're investing, and that is where, and you also said that, Mick, about the education side of it and understanding, and that's one of the things my own mum, she just thinks, well, I have my money in a bank, that's safe. I can think of that. But she could have had 3-4 times the amount of money there if she just understood or had education, and her son's not the right person to educate her, but there's that education piece there, because when you retire, it's not over. You've got 30 years or 40 years to live. So
absolutely. I like this little joke here. I have a diversified retirement plan. Sometimes I wish for money, sometimes I hope for money, sometimes I pray for money. So I think it really sums up what Mark was just saying, and having a diversified plan and being very, very clear about where you're invested to make sure by the time you actually stop the earning phase of your life, you're set up with the most amount of capital to then obviously use into retirement. So that's really important. Actually, before I jump into the next question, I might just ask, has anyone got any questions about what we've discussed so far, or I want to pose the question to the panel? Cool. You must be ticking a few boxes. Good. Everyone's well informed. Very good. Okay, Mark, we'll start off with you. You mentioned there about people worrying and concerned about leading up to retirement. It kind of flows very nicely on from what you just talked about a diversified portfolio and kind of getting there where they need to. What are the things that people kept up at night thinking about? What are the concerns they have leading into retirement? And we've talked about how much is enough. What else is there?
That's pretty well still the number one. People will, leading up to retirement is always, it's about how much we'll have enough to retire on. The second thing, which is a long way behind but really is an important one, is what are we going to do when we retire? And I think, as Mick's found, in most people, there's a whole psychology now on retirement. The actual money and the numbers of retiring is the easy part. It's actually, what are you going to do, where are you going to be, what's going to be fulfilling in your life once you retire. It is so important, and that's probably, that's becoming more and more of an issue, and so people are thinking about that. But funny enough, as soon as you do retire, the number one issue for people is, what's going to happen to my estate when I die? I have a daughter, I may not be, I can't say my daughter's just got engaged.
Having a son.
Having a son. We don't know whether that's going to happen. All things hopefully will go great, fingers crossed and all those sort of things, but in reality, divorce is a big issue, and I've worked hard for this estate. How is this going to be looked after for my daughter, my grandchildren, and that's not going to be lost in divorce? So those actually, as soon as you retire, it switches from having enough to retire on is to what's going to happen to my estate. So that's becoming a really big thing when we speak to our clients in review time.
What about the question, how long am I going to last for? How long am I going to live for? Kind of plotting out how much money I need is one thing, but if you're going to live for 10 years longer than everybody else, how are you supposed to fund that? Does that come into the equation as well?
The thing we do from the number side is we model out, and we don't model out, well, the average life expectancy is 81, so about 83 now. Because what if you live to 100? So we do need to be very, very conservative in our numbers, but that's just part of the process. We look at how it's invested, who's it invested with, as well as how long will this last. And it's amazing. Get an extra 1%, will add another 7 years into the income when you retirement. So, even we went to something this morning and showed that rather than retiring at 62, they retired at 64, they added another 10 years to their income. The exact same amount of money, but just working another 2 years, add another 10, 15 years to retirement. So there's a lot of those things, and that's the other thing too. once you retire, you sort of say, well, it's now set and forget. No, we're still reviewing our clients every single year because you still have goals, you still have plans. Things are going to change, like aged care and the whole thing, and the market's changed. So we need to be on top of that.
Yeah, projecting out that income is super important. It is extremely important. You may want to take a holiday every couple of years. It may come with a price tag as well. You may want to buy a new car every 5 to 10 years, whatever the case may be. It all comes with a price tag. But then importantly, the other end of the spectrum is aged care. How do you fund aged care once you move to the point where physically you can't support yourself anymore? So it may be that down the track you do need something else at the end of the 82, 83 or 90, whichever age that you feel that, depending on longevity and the type of health that you and your family may have, it may be worth plotting in that as well. So being able to model that's super important as well. Mick, from your perspective, obviously family, you've got 2 boys, from your perspective, looking after the kids is an important part. I remember you saying that one of the boys was back home for a period of time, and obviously your health, that's changed things as well. Is that still keeping you up at night? What else is kind of keeping you up as a living, breathing retiree?
No, the will thing's important, you know what I mean? And you got a power of attorney and all that sort of stuff, or, you do it before. I've got a sister that's actually, I think, bordering a bit on dementia at the moment, so all of a sudden she's put none of that in place. That could be an issue. She should have done it years ago. You know what I mean? So I would, that puts all that to rest. So, if something happens, the boys are fine. It's all locked away and such. So, you're right too. About, it's interesting when I go to my planner because we put in when we need a new car, like 5 years' time or something. And we had holidays, but because of the health issues I had, we took that one holiday out. And all of a sudden, Joanne goes in and said, "We'll take that out and put that in there." Like all of a sudden, she's involved in the whole plan because he prints it out and says, "Well, that happens in 5 years." And then we said, "Well, we'll get the car now." So we brought that forward and just adjusted on your spreadsheets, are they? I don't know, something, whatever you call it.
You are a big fan of spreadsheets.
Yeah, big fan of spreadsheets. So that works really well when you sit down. We sit down, I think, nearly every 6 months.
Have you had your Japanese holiday?
No. We've been once, we'll go.
Mick loves the Japanese capitals that sound and feel a lot like beer. So they're all the places that are high on his...
But now I'm only allowed to have 2 a day, so thank you.
Have 2 of those.
2 of those big ones,
Are you usually right?
Victoria, from your perspective, one of the areas we're going to touch on is around the mental wellbeing piece. And we've been talking about meditation and perhaps some other things that, not only the physical and financial side, but the mental wellbeing is really important. You can share some of your thoughts around the meditation and how that's helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Like, a lot of people think meditation, that sounds really woo-woo. That's not something I would do. But it's really beneficial and it's very mainstream now. I can highly recommend an app that you can just get on your phone called Calm. And once you've bought it, I think it's $60, but you've got it forever. And it's got the most amazing meditations that you can do, and it can just be like a couple of minutes a day. It doesn't take very long. And also that brings me to sleep, because sleep can get a bit more difficult as you mature. And it's got these amazing sleep meditations and little stories to listen to before bed, which some of them are narrated by Stephen Fry. So they're really entertaining. But they put you into a really calm mindset so that you can drop off to sleep. But also they've got meditations and just breathing exercises to calm you right down. And it really, really changes how you feel all the time about yourself and how you react. You dissipate anger and you haven't got that inside you anymore. So I thoroughly recommend you giving meditation a go, and it doesn't have to be too out there. It can be very mainstream. And the other buzzword going around now is mindfulness. And again, that can be really, really simple. It's as simple as thinking, well, there's no point worrying about the past anymore, because no amount of worrying about the past is going to change anything now. There's not much point worrying about the future. By all means, plan for it. That's really, really important. But there's no point worrying about it. All I really have is this moment and this day. So try as much as possible to be in the present. And if you can practice that, every time you get a bit worried about, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, or I'm worried about this might happen, try to think, let's just focus on today and what I've got today. And also gratitude is really important. Dr. Tim Sharp from the Happiness Institute talks a lot about gratitude. And it's, even just think of 3 things. So like if you can make it a bit of a habit, just before you go to bed, think about 3 things I'm grateful for. And it can be as simple as a hug from your child, or somebody phoning you, or you know, a nice chat you had with your friend, and that you have a roof over your head and fresh water, you know, and that again gives you internal happiness, and yeah, it makes you feel a lot more positive. And at the end of the day, more positive people live longer and healthier.
I found another little joke. I don't endorse this one at all. This one is so not true. But you're always going to find someone who's in a better position than you are. So you know, your retirement plan isn't about finding someone else who's obviously planned a lot better. But as Mick said, you know, when you retire, you find yourself spending a lot of time with your partner. Sometimes you need to reassess how you engage and how you interact with your partner. So certainly don't endorse this one, but I thought it was funny what you saying.
Saying that,
Oh,
we
here
did
we go.
either, you know, I love stats, a good stat, and went to a downsizing seminar, and her stat, Professor Joanne Earle from Macquarie University came up with 2 years after you retire is the peak of divorce rates. Because they're not used to living together during the day. So I thought, wow, that is interesting. Scary too.
Absolutely.
But if you can stay married, you'll live longer, especially men. Especially men.
Well, that takes us,
Absolutely.
They need to stay married.
That takes us to our next question, which is you know, maintaining a healthy lifestyle. We'll reflect back on your list that you have there. That social interaction is very, very important. You know, I think of you know, my nan is 96. She's unbelievably active. She goes on a walk around. She's in a retirement village, and she has you know, low care dependency. And she walks around every day. She says hello to everybody, and she's a social butterfly. Mentally sharp as a tack. You know, obviously the body's failing a little bit at her age. I'd love to think that when I'm 96, I'm as physically active and mentally aware as what she is. But I can see that's just so important. You know, what type of thoughts have you got around you know, keeping active and the things you can do, and what you need to be considering as you enter into retirement to keep active?
Is that me?
Yeah,
Not me. It's important to have goals and a purpose. As Mick said, you know, he's coaching softball, so he's got that passion and that purpose, which is fantastic. I was talking to a lady called Di Westerway. She started a movement called Coast Trek. You might see them walking from Palm Beach to Balmoral, and it's groups of women, and men are invited too, but it's mainly women. And they raise money for Fred Hollow's foundation. They raise many, many millions of dollars every year for Fred Hollow's. And she said that because these women are walking for charity, they feel like they're doing something for the greater good. And at the heart of everyone is a need to do something for the greater good. So whatever that is for you, whether it's helping Meals on Wheels, or whether it's helping kids learn to play softball, and whatever that means for you. I mean, there's so many charities out there that need help. So find something that you have a passion for, and you know, get stuck in, get involved, and that's good for your social as well. But it doesn't have to be charity. It could be, you know, Colonel Sanders started Kentucky Fried Chicken at 65.
Something to dream
You can do
about.
something amazing. And Picasso was still painting well into his 90s.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that you want to do, yeah, find your purpose, find your passions, and set your goals. Keep setting goals, because you've got to keep striving towards something so that you feel satisfied.
Mick, in the first 6 months of your retirement, you admitted, you didn't do an awful lot.
No.
what made you change? Obviously, is it about having some kind of routine, having a rhythm? You mentioned you've taken up the ukulele. How did you get yourself focused to want to do something like that? And what do you do now to make sure that you're not kind of sitting at home, checking the emails, hoping your wife doesn't ask you what you did today?
Oh, Joanne, she was a big push. She said, you can't just sit here all day. You know what I mean? You've got to do something. And she was right. I knew that. But her push, you know, was important. Otherwise, I would have still probably sitting home.
Yeah. Did you enjoy yourself sitting, doing not much?
Oh, I was all right for 3 months or so. No, not really.
Yeah. And now, is there more of a structure in your day, in your week? You mentioned.
Oh, yeah. In the week there is, because, well, I've got the gym, you got ukulele, I've got a couple of softball gigs, jobs.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And how many days a week are you working?
Yeah, probably 2.
Yep.
Sometimes 3 to be. 3 at the moment. I've got another school gig that's the third year I'm doing it. So, but it gets to the point where I knock them back now. Then I use other people. I've got some young girls that play softball, so I'm sort of employing them as subcontractors. So yeah, I think I've started a business.
There you go.
Starting an empire again.
No?
Starting.
Yeah.
So from your perspective now, how does that fit in with your goal? Is there a time frame you want to be still working, being active?
Oh, as long as I can, you know. And the softball stuff is not that strenuous, so I figure I can keep doing that for a long time. Like I just sit there and give signals, you know, and whatever they do. So that's yeah. I haven't put a time on that. I don't want to. I don't think. But, you know, I want to keep doing it. As long as you go, I'll go forever. You know. It goes to another level sometimes, so you can do it, yeah. You go on ukulele cruises. If you're hopping on a cruise and there's a whole lot of people coming on with ukuleles, I'd reconsider probably. And maybe book the next one. Yeah. So,
Mark, from your perspective, you've got many retiree clients. What sort of examples have you got of people kind of taking time, learning hobbies, adjusting their lifestyle? Do you have any kind of insights on what other clients have done?
Yeah, what Victoria and Mick said was absolutely right. There is actually a need, and it's just surprising. And while I've been doing this for 30 years, I've only probably been asking this question for about the last 5. But when I sort of say, well, okay, mathematically the numbers are all working, and okay, what are you planning to do? And some will say, oh, I just want to help set the kids up. I say, okay, once that's looked after, what do you want to do? What's important to you? And just keep going. So, oh, okay, I want to make sure, the estate's looked after. Okay, what's that? And it's always eventually comes out, usually something like, yes, there is a higher purpose, whether I want to help with a charity, whether I want to help give back to children. And I do think there is an inbuilt need to serve. And I've always believed that, and in our profession there's a lot of the old advisors that when I first started 30 years ago and helped me through, and they always basically just said, yeah, but when it's your turn you've got to give back as well. So I think that's just a common trait through humanity, is that there is a want to serve, and if everything else, the basics are looked after, you want to do. And I do see that as just a continuing theme when I ask clients that if everything else is looked after, what is, and people are going to Fiji where they've gone to holidays and they want to help the kids there, or they have basically the #1 cosmetic surgeon in Australia, Dr. Daryl Hodgkinson, and when I go there to look, everyone just looking around here, what are you getting done? What are you getting done? I'm saying, hey, I'm just here to see the doctor. But anyway, and that's exactly what's my story. And he set up this thing in the Philippines, and all these little kids who have vitamin C deficiency, and they all got born with cleft lips, and he just goes up there and he puts his own money and brings his own nurses and everything like that and team, and now he's training the people there to do it themselves. And there's all these kids that have these little deformities, and just without that doctor doing it, and there's no need for him to do it, but he just wanted to give back. So it's just a common trait I see amongst clients now, that there's something. It can be just something, coaching soccer, whatever it is, but just something to give back. And it keeps you active as well.
Yeah, okay, very good. In the rise of tattoos and sleeves and a whole bunch of them. It's more appropriate. 30, 40 years from now, I think there will be this situation in the retirement village of people rolling up their arms, checking out what tattoos they've got. They may look a little bit different to how it looks today, but I thought it was quite amusing. But it does go on to the next question, which is all about considering where you're actually living. And I think that's a really important part of the retirement plan. Understanding kind of your boundaries and the world that you live in. At some point, you're going to have to make the critical decision about selling your house and downsizing. Whether that's into a care facility, whether that's into the support of family or loved ones or friends. It's a decision at some point you're going to have to work through. Now, whether it's driven by a financial need, that's a consideration at the same time as well, because to fund aged care, you need to obviously consider that amount of capital that you need to inject into the aged care facility. That's always something that's going to be on people's minds as well. So Mark, I might start with you. Considering your living environment and kind of at what stage you need to downsize, what do you typically suggest for clients who are kind of playing with the concept of what they should do when they should plan for that?
Well, there's two critical times in your timeline from post-retirement. And the government's actually recognised this with the 1st of July legislation coming in for downsizing. So you downsize and you can put in 300,000 to your super. So even the government's recognising this as a need. But that's the first one. But as I said, now that's just being countered with adult children not wanting to leave home. So the empty nesting is there, but it's maybe not as much as it used to be. But that's the first one. You've got a 5-bedroom house or 4-bedroom house. There's upkeep of that. Do I really want to do that? Do I still want to mow the lawns? And so that is a big critical shift, even if this is this place I want to live. The second part to that is once you've done that, or even if you don't do that, but at least you've recognised that, it's that later one where it is aged care. And it's actually nicknamed in our industry the conversation, because no adult child wants to have that conversation with their aged parent who, and I've heard so often, I'm hearing it from my own mother-in-law, you're going to take me out of here in a box. It's the only way you're going to get me out of here. But it doesn't work that way. It's usually something happens, fall down, break a hip, the actual doctor will make that decision for you to say, you're not going back to your home. And then you've got to worry about all the acronyms like ACAC and DADS and RAPS and the whole thing. It's quite complicated and a very emotional thing for any adult child who's gone through this. So all that, even if your parent says, I'm never going to leave here, it's trying to get that conversation, or better, what we found out is you get a third person, and financial advisors are being trained up on this, to have that conversation. So at least think you've got someone independent who can have that hard conversation with your parent, and I just think that's something that's going to become more and more, because it is just people living longer but they can't stay at home.
Yeah. Mick, from your perspective, do you have a plan around what you're going to do longer term?
It's a good question, because it did come up with my planner the last time we met about when do you think you'll sell. And it upset me because I'm a bit like that. I don't want to move. And at the moment there's no reason, but I guess it's something that we've got to start thinking about, because we've got a 3-bedroom with a study place. It's nice. It's in a lovely area, but there's going to become a time we're a fair way away from public transport. So I guess it's something that we're going to have to look at in the next, 5 years. Because it'll get to the point where we've just got to sell. It's too big and all those issues.
Yeah. The kids, your 2 boys, have they had the conversation with you to talk about what they're going to do longer term?
With the house?
With the house, your health?
No, not really. Oh, health we have, not the house.
Yeah.
No, I did get upset. I said, I don't want to sell. What's wrong with me? I'm fine. I can drive the car still, blah, blah, blah. But the more you think about it, the more you think, oh yeah, there will come a time when maybe I can't drive, and to be near public transport is going to be everything. So, yeah.
It's always Uber.
There is always Uber. Exactly right. Yeah. A few competitors that are coming out too. I thought I'd flick onto this little one. This is my last little joke for tonight. Again, this is all about making sure you plan early. It's all about making sure that you're very clear on what your long-term objectives are, your financial goals are being met, had to make an adjustment, so your new retirement date is now 2065. So you don't want to be in that position where you are putting it off. It is about starting early and making sure someone can hold you accountable to a plan. So look, we'll start to wrap up, and I'll be really keen to get tips from the panel. What are your top tips that you could give people? I've written a whole bunch of tips down tonight, which we'll share in the wrap up, and we'll send out to you so you can have these for when you're thinking about your plan. But Mark, what's your top tips for people looking to retire?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think primarily, and it's not actually about the money, it's actually just, what are you planning to do? You've just got to sit down and funny, if you're married, you may have different versions of what you want to do. It's quite important to actually discuss where you're going to live, what you're going to do, what is going to be fulfilling for you in retirement. So I think, to me, that's number one. Secondly, yes, just to sort of say, okay, well, when I retire, I'm just going to put my money in the bank. That's not a plan. You do need to have an idea of where you're going to have your money invested, where it's going to be. And it doesn't have to be super, could be property, could be anything, but you do need to have an idea of what and that's got to be continually reviewed. Probably the third one is still, what are you going to do with those adult children if they won't leave home? I think that's a pretty important one.
Did anyone see that story? The young guy who was 31? 30? Yeah. He was given 30 days by court to leave the house in America because he refused to leave. And he was arguing that in any type of lease or tenant agreement, you should have 6 months notice. Like, this guy's 30. Maybe I'm different. Maybe I hope no one here has adult kids who are in that same situation. Anyway, okay, that's good. Victoria?
I think appreciating old age and thinking of it as something that's really positive. I mean, it is a privilege denied to many, so be very grateful about going into your old age, and the more positively you can think about it, think of the wisdom you've accumulated, think of your experience and your knowledge, and how you can share that with the world. And also, I mentioned stay married, because you'll live longer if you stay married. Get a dog. My husband doesn't want one, but a dog will keep you young because you have to go and walk it. And get out and do something amazing. Mick's a fantastic example of somebody who is doing something new and fresh, teaching softball and playing the ukulele. And, if you're still fit and healthy, do something like go to Spain and do that walk. It's called the Camino de Santiago, or the Pacific Trail in the US. Do something really exciting and keep setting goals, and look after your health with your nutrition and exercise. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Weight training is really good as you get older because it helps maintain your bone density, and walking. Walking's great, and it's proven that the faster you walk, the better for your cognitive ability. It helps stave off dementia if you walk fast. So they're my top tips.
Cool. Mick, what do you reckon?
I'll get a dog, mate. Because no matter what happens, you can always talk to the dog, right? If you're at home alone and the dog's there, you say, "Look, Marley, I'm just going out. Is that okay?" And it always says okay. So I'd get a dog. You always win the argument. Listen, I'd use a planner. Have a plan in place, a coach, whatever you want to call them. But and involve your partner, obviously. I should have probably involved Joan earlier, but anyway, that's another story. So use a planner, have a plan. Remember, superannuation, that's where I go, is long term. So go along with it, don't panic about the short term hiccups. Compound interest, the magic of compound interest, it works, trust me. With the plan, I used to have the 70-20-10. 70% was for short term living, 20% was for short-term savings, holidays, cars, whatever, and then I'll put 10% away in my super. I think it's probably going to be more now, but that was always my mantra.
Of your income, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, 70-20-10. You need to have a savings plan, not a spending plan. A lot of us have good, Yeah, a lot of us have good spending plans. So you need to have a savings plan, and that's where superannuation is good, because you can't touch the mongrel. You know what I mean? It's there, you can't touch it, right? So it helps discipline, right? When you can't touch anything. And the more important one is probably what Victoria's been on about, is staying active and doing things. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you'll vegetate, use it, you'll lose it. So just keep yourself active, keep yourself doing something. You know? There's lots you can do. You'd be surprised. But yeah,
Great, thanks guys. That was really good. I was going to cap out a whole bunch of tips that we talked about tonight. Mark raised a really good one earlier, talking about don't rely on the government. The government won't look after you, and depending on how much money you're saving or how much money, importantly, you're spending now, when you get to retirement, that reduced amount of age pension probably isn't going to be all that you can rely on. So be very clear around that. I love the social integration point. Be social, talk to people, get out and about, meet new people, really, really good. Having a purpose, be active in there as well. Have a balanced diet. I love the 2/3, 1/3. Mixed point around having a smaller plate. Yeah, fantastic, I really like that. I'm in the middle of doing that at the moment. Bloody hard, but it's good for you, apparently. I do like the 2 wines per day as well. That was good. Be very clear on your spending before retirement. We did touch on that. Be connected with family. That was really important. I like that one. That was really good. Have a plan or consider what you're going to do about downsizing, whether that's aged care facility or whether that's what type of facility you want to be in, where it's a low care, high care, medium care mechanism that will be sitting around you. Staying married means you live longer. Appreciating old age, I think that's really, really good. Get a dog, I love that. Mick, I love the 70-20-10 leading up to retirement. So the way you spend your money is 70% on yourself short term, 20% mid-term, and 10% longer term. You did mention there that numbers may change now. I love that saving. Have a savings plan, not a spending plan as you enter retirement as well. So that was really cool. Mark, Victoria, Mick, thanks so much for being on our panel tonight. Hope you all appreciate it. Just a couple of last thoughts. As I said, on your seat, there's 2 things. One is a retirement article that Steve wrote, which is all about what's your retirement income number, which is really important as you start to progress your thinking around retiring. One of the best things you can do for us is fill in the feedback form. It helps determine what you liked or perhaps where we could improve for next time, and also if we can mention any topics you may want to see in the next session as well. You'll receive an email tomorrow morning thanking you for your attendance. We've also got a gift, a $200 voucher to redeem on our travel partners website, so please log in, activate your account, and you can navigate around there. We've got some packs that are up the back as well, which tell a little bit more about a Noel & Co holistic financial planning business. So if you want to learn more about what we do and potentially how we can support you, please take one on the way out and get in contact with us. This event doesn't happen with the support of our team, so thanks for the team at Noel & Co and your Wealth Hub, so thank you very much. And most importantly, you guys for coming along. I know it's a cold night, it's got a little bit wet there just before the end, so appreciate you coming along. And the last thing, last but not least, we've got 2 small gifts. Mark, you don't get one.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you
very much.
much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone.
Longer.
Thank you very much.